forward to a good conversation with you, Wouter, about the organization and everything that is going on around it. Wouter, first of all, welcome. Great to have you on today's spotlight. And to
Thank you
get
for having
things,
me.
pleasure. And to get things, kicked off, let's maybe start with a bit of an overview of DeFi Holdings, because there's a lot of people in the audience I'm sure that know exactly what you're doing, but there's also always new participants who see the company, think it's something very interesting, but don't have a good feel of what your business exactly is and what you focus on. Maybe let you start with that.
Absolutely, my pleasure. So I think what's always very helpful for me and how I understand concepts is usually through examples. So in my previous business, SecFi, we pioneered a concept where, for which I raised $600 million, and we effectively pioneered the concept of lending against private company stock. Now, we did this in a purely centralized finance way, if you will. So we have a broker dealer, we worked with intermediaries, with banks, with lawyers, with trustees, custodians, to effectively enable these loans on private company assets. And a lot of that has to do because we have the need for central authorities that kind of manage sort of this process, and intermediaries to make sure that we don't have counterparty risk and the like. Now, that, as you can see from the parties that I mentioned, like a lot of that means that there's a lot of people that need fees, they need to be paid for their services in order for that system to run. And that is, of course, who pays that in the end is the consumer. Now, before I sort of talk about our company, the concept of decentralized finance needs to be understood. And in a decentralized finance way, effectively, rather than having all these intermediaries that need to trust each other through contracts and other sort of facets, we can codify a lot of these rules and executions into what is effectively a smart contract. So it's the evolution of, first we had Bitcoin, then we had Ethereum, and now we have kind of, this has evolved into the decentralized finance space, where a lot of these applications can talk to each other and actors can transact with each other. Me, you can do a transaction without the need for a central intermediary. So that's DeFi. And what we do with DeFi Technologies is, it's my sort of perception that who reaps the most rewards from the financial innovation usually is like the early investors, the venture capitalists, et cetera. And what we do with DeFi Technologies is we give people, retail investors, public markets investors, early exposure to what I believe is the next wave of financial innovation. So that's like on an abstract high level what DeFi Technologies is all about and what we're trying to realize.
So if we zoom in a little bit on that, so that's a definition of decentralized finance, leveraging smart contracts, leveraging the blockchain to enable all of that, creating full certainty around those transactions. That is a model. What are the business propositions that you are working on today? So I saw you announced recently something around governance. What are the various use cases or business cases that you are tangibly addressing today?
Yeah, so we have, if I had to summarize this, I would kind of pick sort of four different, I put them in four different baskets, if you will. So the first thing with our acquisition on partnership with Valor, we effectively create exchange traded notes that synthetically track the value of an underlying asset. So to sort of translate that a little bit, it's like rather than you having to go on Kraken or on Binance and manage public keys, manage your wallet, logins, etc., you can buy effectively DeFi protocols, trackers thereof, simply from your brokerage account. So we started doing this in December with launching a Bitcoin Zero, which is our first product. It's now one of the most traded products on the Nordic growth market. And it makes it really easy for people to get access to, for example, Bitcoin without having to, manage all these wallets and etc. So that's number one. Number two, we have a treasury product. So as we all know, if you have USD or even Euro on your balance sheet, the chances are very high that you need to pay interest on this. So you're not getting interest anymore. You have to pay interest to your bank. Now, this is a big problem for treasury departments or for big corporates. If you move this to the decentralized finance space, we have a product where you can effectively invest your USD. You have no underlying asset risk in terms of the volatility of Bitcoin or et cetera. So it's not really like an Elon Musk type of investment, if you will. But we can still use that USD and stake that into some of these DeFi protocols. So we're effectively lending that out and getting yield. And this can be north of 10%, 20% in some of the more stable, mature businesses. As you saw from today, we also have a big, we also have a venture business. So we just invested today, announced that we invested in Saffron, which is an investment I really like because it's all about derivatives and making sort of the markets like more efficient in a decentralized finance space. So we do that, and we also support some of the protocols that are out there. And the last announcement that we made was our DeFi governance project that you alluded to, which is, picture this: if you have a central authority, call it like what happened to GameStop. Now, Vlad could unilaterally decide, I'm going to stop trading on GameStop. Now, in a decentralized organization, you still need actors that decide something. It's just not a central person. So we effectively become one of those, call it like a sort of board directors in a traditional sense, of a DeFi protocol that together have to decide on the future of the protocol. And a public market contract is the perfect vehicle for doing that, perfect company to do this. So those are like the four buckets, if you to sort of answer your question.
Yeah, no, I think that gives a good overview. And if you look at those four buckets and those four, let's give it a generic name, offerings, where is your customer base? What is the nature of your customer base, and where would you say are they today mainly active? Where are they operating from?
So I think if you had to distill it down, there's a couple of groups for which is very interesting. So the first sort of obvious are sort of retail investors that do not necessarily understand, like if I take a step back, like buying Bitcoin now is like relatively easy. But if you have to buy some of these more complicated DeFi protocols, they might not be on an exchange. The exchange might not be super user friendly. And then it's not just about buying. I just called about the concept of like, staking your USD or staking some of these protocols. That is sometimes a complicated process that you have to manage. So we remove all of that complexity for retail investors that just simply won't get the same return that we would get because of the knowledge that we have in-house. Then another sort of obvious one is I speak to a lot of private banks that are super excited about these type of products. Some of their clients are looking for more stable kind of yield, and that's been very hard to find. That you have to almost go long equities. And that's some clients are just not comfortable with this. The problem is banks often can't directly work with exchanges. What they can work with is a regulated body that handles this for them. So we effectively act as almost like a trading division intermediary, creates these certificates, and they can allow their clients to buy it in the market, or they can put it in the portfolio of one of their clients. So those are kind of like the main buckets in it. And then we find outside cases, of course, where some funds are interested, have big books, venture-backed companies that have a lot of assets on their balance sheet suddenly. So that gives you kind of a flavor of the type of customers that we work with.
So if I'm a retail investor now and I would like to take advantage of some of those investment opportunities that you mentioned, how do I approach that?
So it depends on what jurisdiction you are. So we started actually listing our products in Europe. So we started with the Nordic growth market and in Sweden, working very closely together with the FSA, and they've approved us to effectively launch the top 50 protocols, if you will, in the Euro area, so we can passport throughout Europe. So you could buy that through your interactive brokerage account. Maybe you have even Fidelity, TD Ameritrade. They're available there. So that's kind of like one of the things that we're looking at, and obviously, over time, we're looking to expand, markets where we see demand, and we're also closely looking, of course, in the environment in North America, where not just ETNs are becoming popular, but ETFs are increasingly more talked about from an SEC point of view in the US. So we're closely following that news, of course, as well.
Yeah, and we've seen a couple of those products coming to market in Canada. More focused on the classical ones, the Bitcoin ETF, Ether ETFs, and things of that nature. So let's indeed make sure that you keep a close eye on the North American market, because I can tell you, based on what I see, there's no doubts in my mind there's a lot of interest out here. So looking at where you are today, and the offerings that you have today, what is your long-term strategy? What is the outcome you're looking for?
Yeah, the outcome that we're looking for is really it really stands with our initial our initial mission. So when someone asks me summarize DeFi technologies in one sentence, our objective is to give retail and public market investors exposure to the next wave of financial innovation. So we really hope that through these 4 buckets that we're able to do that, and people they don't get the simply sort of a tracker to DeFi, right? They don't get like by buying our stock, it's not like you're buying into Grayscale BTC Trust. It is both diversified in the products that we offer, for example, on the tracker and the single ETN side, but we also have multiple different facets that are providing, for example, the infrastructure layer with the governance, with the treasury department, which is more focused on corporate. So thereby we hope to give users a more sort of stable and diversified approach to the entire DeFi ecosystem, rather than simply following the market, if you will.
Yeah. Where are you investing today? Like, if you would say, where is the money going that you have been raising, and where's your focus over there? Is it more around R&D? Is it more around marketing and communication? Like, where is your focus financially?
So yeah, we just closed a $10 million private placement a few weeks ago, and a lot of that has to do also with, for example, in our Valor business, so in our ETM business, you need to be somewhat liquid if you expand, right? So the more products that we launch, if someone buys it in the market, we need to be able to hedge that one-to-one immediately. If someone sells in the market, we need to have the liquidity to provide that. So you're always dealing with like these short liquidity cycles that we have to deal with. Then, so that's sort of on that side, and a lot of that is sort of, not really working capital, but it's kind of like you need to be liquid in order to facilitate those trades and get the yield on that. So that will be a big part. Then we also have, like you mentioned, research and development. So the treasury side, there's a lot of there to figure out. We of course have the product in mind, but there's a lot of things around like new regulation coming in around what corporates want in terms of asset-backed versus ETN. Like this sort of ETF versus ETN model that we discussed earlier. A lot of work goes into there, and then it's also simply like expanding the team because of so many of the opportunities that we have. So those are like the high level things that we're focused on in the near future.
Yeah. No, I can see that. And if you look at the DeFi holdings today, and you position yourself, I'm thinking now as a potential investor, like who do you consider as your main competitors? And it's always, difficult question to ask, but I think it's an important question to ask. Who do you think are your main competitors, and why do you think you're different? What makes you different?
Yeah, I think it's always a great question, and I see this always in if I had to describe this, I see this along sort of 2 axes. So at the one hand, you just have competition on product. So if you have, let's say that we give you exposure to Aave or to synthetics or to Compound or Curve, the honest answer is, what is our direct competition? Well, you can buy those in exchanges. You could trade that yourself, right? That is directly what you can do. And if you understand that process, you're comfortable well with the process, then of course there's competition there. What we offer in comparison to that, of course, is ease, simplicity. You have the governance. You have also that the risk is not necessarily, if you mess up your own private key, your wallet and stuff, that risk is with you. If you deal with us, there's a different sort of counterparty that you're dealing with, obviously. So those are some of the things that we deal with that. And then, as the DeFi space grows, naturally, it's not as big as Bitcoin, right? It's now at $40 billion market cap, but we're talking about the potential to disrupt the financial industry.
Any other thoughts you wanna cover on that?
Yeah, so the other thing is that you will have, as the DeFi market grows, which is currently at 40 billion, which sounds like a lot, but we're talking about the disruption of the total global financial market, which runs into the trillions of dollars, as we all know. And what the thing is there is that you will, of course, this will definitely get interest. What you see already after Bitcoin, after Grayscale had their success, which I think now runs at like $20 billion market cap just on their trust alone. There will be other players that will go into the market and try to also do a DeFi play. So I think we'll see new entrants. I think we're well positioned. And my view on this is always, like, if there's a market and people are already doing this, and we have a team here that can execute very well with the advisors that we have on board, with the people that we have on board, the fact that we have first mover advantage, that just means that we can get a lot, and we're just not really competing with each other. It's just about the market share, and I think the market is potentially gigantic.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that tells us a little bit about the opportunity. There's a couple of questions that come in. I just want to throw one quickly in, and I'll come back to the other one. Non-fungible tokens. Lots of talk about that recently with some people selling their first Twitters and other ones refusing to do it. What's your view on that? You think that that's a business, a real business?
I have my personal view on this, of course, and I think that is probably the best way to answer this because I think it's very early on in the market. Like I'm personally very excited about non-fungible tokens. I think especially if you look at sort of the newer wealth, the millennials that are kind of looking also for ways to be creative and artists to be paid. There's a lot of digital art that goes around that people make, especially also during COVID. There's a lot of people doing their Photoshops and beautiful things are being made there. And I think it's been very hard for those people to monetize themselves, but clearly there's a market for people that want to pay for digital art and want to also, I think with art, there's always like, look, this is my painting, yeah, right? That's the same is true if you have a Van Gogh in your house, or whether you have maybe a very popular cat meme, which came out. And I think there is something to say for that creative market. I think will definitely be very big. It's just we have to see like where it will go, who the big players are. But I think it's really in its infancy, just like DeFi was 2 years ago. And I think it's a very interesting market.
Yeah, coming back to the investor perspective, and I'm talking about the investor investing in your organization, in your corporation. You touched upon it very briefly at the beginning when you said, giving retail an opportunity. But as a retail investor, why should I now invest in DeFi holdings? Is this the right moment? Should I have done it earlier? Should I wait a little bit? Is this the right moment? What are your views and your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think like I mentioned, the way I look at this is like if you look at the total market for financial services and for the financial sort of global economy, I think that is so big compared to where DeFi is currently at the 40 billion market cap that it is today. So there will be a really big sort of market opportunity there to capitalize on. So I think there's still a very good way to sort of get into the market and into DeFi right now. And I think we're just seeing the beginnings of what crypto was maybe 4, 5, 6 years ago. I think that's where we are. The really big benefit why I'm so bullish and a big believer on DeFi is that we've had the infrastructure development that is Bitcoin and Ethereum. We've had sort of the applications being built on Ethereum and sort of the ICO craziness, if you will. So the market has seen that a very sort of maturing of applications, which I think why it's a very good way for people to get into the company and to DeFi.
Yeah. So good moment because of the fact that there's a big market ahead of us, and you're in a position now to be part of a first mover advantage with a big market ahead of us. How about and I'm looking a bit at the questions that are coming in. How about regulatory risks and concerns? Do you see that as an element? There's a lot of, as you know, a lot of discussions among the regulators, lots of things happening here in Canada also around some of the crypto exchanges and so on. What are your concerns about the regulatory environment in which you're operating, and what are the other big risks that you keep an eye on and that you want to manage?
Yeah, I think with any sort of new technology and things that are coming up, we always have to look at regulatory risk. In my previous business, SecFi, we were regulated by the SEC, FINRA, so we have a sort of track record. I've been doing that for like 4 years, and this is something we always think about with any new product, any new counterparty we work with. This is always a thing. I think there's a couple of really good developments as of late, as maybe perhaps a lot of people have followed. In terms of stable coins, there have been very, very positive developments, be it with guidance from the OCC and the SEC regarding how to treat that. So I think there is there is a real sort of it's really being looked at in sort of positive in a positive sense from our part. But we do look at this. So you always have to ask yourself: what is it a security? If so, how is it being sold to, for example, U.S. investors? Is that done through the right channels? And that's also where, if you look at our involvement, for example, with protocols, you're looking more at the mature, established protocols rather than sort of the startups, if you will, that where things are not maybe audited, the security hasn't been proven, the volume isn't there. So you really have to look at all these kind of things when you get involved, and it's something you continuously have to absolutely look at. So those are some of the risks that we see, and some of the things that how we're sort of addressing it and looking at it.
Yeah, which is going to take me to another question. Risk. Are there? We talked about the potential. Can we zoom in a little bit on the team? So you referred to the team, but when I look at a company, to be very honest with you, you look at the value proposition, you look at the market opportunity, but you spend a hell of a lot of time, or I spend a hell of a lot of time on looking at the team, and the team makes a big difference. Can you tell us a little bit more about that team? And you touched upon it briefly.
Absolutely, and I agree. I think with any sort of company that is entering a market as a new product idea, it's at the end of the day, at the first phase, you always invest, whether it's venture or whether it's what we're doing today, you always invest based on the team, and that's kind of what we've put together. So my background, of course, in SecFi, having raised $600 million for the strategy there, working 4 years in a heavily regulated environment. Has really helped me sort of solidify and understand how you can make that much more efficient, which is why I'm so excited about DeFi. How I came together with my co-founder, Olivier Rossi Newton, who is the founder of Hive, which is one of the largest crypto miners in the world, also listed in Canada on the TSXV, has a wealth of experience in crypto, dealing with public markets, dealing with for the first sort of audit that they ever had to do on crypto from a public markets perspective. So really has a lot of experience there. To go sort of a little bit more to how you source opportunities, I brought on board a friend of mine, Anthony Pompliano, who is one of the figureheads if you talk about Bitcoin globally in terms of how he's on Twitter and getting involved. He's invested over 100 million into these crypto projects, so it's kind of like a very strong team on that side. And then on the operational side, one of my very good friends that I brought on board is one is a guy called Thibaut Serol, who is the founder of Snowflake EMEA, knows all the corporates, knows kind of like, if we have to the treasury side, how to get in, how to get the contacts to really build out that business. And then we have a team on the West Coast that is very good at sourcing these opportunities. We have press released, of course, on a number of them, including Luxor, Saffron, and a few others. And it's very important to have that foothold in Silicon Valley. And that's not what retail investors can get, right? So we're democratizing some of that access that is typically hard to get with the team that we have based out of San Francisco, and giving people that access. That gives you a little bit of a flavor of how we put together the team in different baskets.
Yeah. And well, it sounds like a very solid team with extremely relevant experience. One question that I see coming back a couple of times, and we're going to run a bit over because we started a bit later, so I hope everyone will understand that. Some question that keeps coming back is around the share structure. Is there anything that you feel worthwhile sharing around the share structure, ownership structure, that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, there's of course the hard data that is of course is public. There's 155 million shares outstanding. A really good chunk is held by insiders or officers of the company, which is great. Like, we're all investors in the private placement that we have, and we continue to support the business on many different fronts. So I think that's really important. We currently also have no debt, so it's a very healthy company from that perspective, which investors typically tend to like. And we're just really excited to have so many different retail investors, institutional investors that came on board, and both of the private placements on board that support this and want to keep supporting us.
Yeah. And I'm a big believer indeed in management investment, and that must be the Dutch side, Wouter. I hate that also. So we never did pick up any debt either. Uh, I'm looking at the few more questions here, and of course, let's make sure we don't share anything that is material information. But what are your views on income, cash flow positive, and things like that? Is there any thoughts you're comfortable to share about that?
Yeah, on a high level, I'll just share a little bit how I've approached every business in the past. So when I started SecFi, we didn't start by building a website and then figured out who's going to come to this website and let's just launch it and see what happens. We always started with let's figure out product market fit. So we did this, for example, in Valor with a simple product without really necessarily a lot of marketing to launch Bitcoin Zero, to prove that we can face the regulatory challenges, we can create the product, we can list the product, and people will buy it. And then you kind of look at, like, through additional raises, like we talked about in the private placements, how can I then grow this business? And we have done the exact same for all of the other buckets that you just saw. So we created the first sort of link in the treasury. On the treasury side, we publicly announced the first deal on the governance side, and we did that in conjunction with launching like the DeFi governance business. We didn't first launch the governance business and then try to see what sticks. So yeah, that's been my as a CEO and operator of various startups, it's always been my approach. So you get that early product market fit and then you grow it. It's too early to kind of give any public statements on kind of numbers, net income, cash flow. Of course, we know the Valor business. We know what it looks like. We know in some of these other tokens, other business lines, what it sort of yields. But over time, as we have more of these conversations, more sort of annual statements, quarterly statements, that will of course become a bigger part of our business. And I think that gives people some guidance as to how we're thinking about this.
When are you going to come out with your next financial update? That's maybe another way to tell people where they can find some additional information.
I think it's post next quarter. So I think this is this quarter ends on March 31st, and I think that's also our book year. But we'll also be sharing that, of course, in the relevant press releases and etc. We'll make sure to communicate that to shareholders.
It's probably going to be around May or something like that. Is that a fair time frame?
I think that's probably fair. Yeah.
Just to give people a bit of a view on when they can expect more. Let me see. There's quite a few questions that came in. We'll maybe not zoom in on how much you plan to raise this year. I'm sure you're gonna, with your growth, you're gonna look at that. But last question maybe that I want to put forward to you, a double question. You decided to upgrade or graduate, I should probably say, from the TSXV to NEO. Why that decision?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think in DeFi we are like entrepreneurs by nature. I'm a serial entrepreneur. My co-founder is a serial entrepreneur. Most of the people that we work with are serial entrepreneurs. And I think when Jos, when we first connected, I think there was the chemistry around how we approach things, how we can help each other, how we can help grow the business, and that just felt really right. And in my career and in business, I've always been very much like, if it feels right, if the chemistry is there, and you both want to sort of join together to make something happen, I think that is the ideal partnership from which we can really launch a successful business and really grow that business. So that was kind of our decision to graduate at some more board of directors that help also with from the compliance and governance side, and it just really solidifies as an institutional player in the field that can really put DeFi in the market for public market investors.
Yep, I appreciate your comments, and definitely it is the spirit in which we work. And maybe I want to stress one point for your audience so that they're very aware of that. But one of the big differences between being what is called a junior issuer and the senior issuer on a tier 1 exchange like NEO is indeed that you are subject to totally different, much more stringent standards from a governance perspective, from a financial controls perspective, from a financial reporting perspective. And why is that important? Well, it's not only important for you investors who are listening to this call, but it's utterly important for institutional investors. because they have typically mandates that will allow them to invest on issuers listed on tier one exchanges, but not listed on venture exchanges. And that is very important for the growth of a company. And then the very last one, listed on NEO today. Are you thinking about listing? You got a lot of presence in Europe, but you're also talking about North America. Are you thinking about listing on another exchange? Like name Nasdaq came up, but I could also say, I could say Euronext, I could say LSE, I could say Deutsche Börse. Any views around that in the nearby future or the longer term future?
Yeah, I think our objective is, of course, that we want to make DeFi technologies and also the DeFi sector as broadly available to people. So where we have to do dual listings or help people get access, of course, we're always looking at these kind of opportunities. So that's kind of what we're working on, especially also if you look at the US, we want to make sure that people have good access to our stock, that have it's easy for them to purchase. So we're always exploring the best ways to do this. It would be too early to say the concrete sort of updates on this, but we're definitely always exploring like how we can best serve shareholders on a global on a global scale, because that is what today's environment is all about, especially during an era of COVID, where it's definitely more global and digital than ever.
Well, you're a global business. You got a global customer base. You have a global shareholder base, and I think that looking at those opportunities is absolutely critical. And I can tell you, that is where we are probably a bit different than many other exchanges, but we help our issuers with that, and we have a couple of those processes ongoing today, and where they benefit, by the way, of the fact of being again on a tier one exchange. But Wouter, I think we covered a lot. We ran over a little bit more than we started late, but I think it was very interesting. I think you gave us, a good overview of the business, where your vision is, where your strategy is. I think you gave us a good view on what makes you unique and the quality of your team. And I think we managed to answer quite a few questions unanswered for the audience. We'll make sure that Wouter and his team gets them, can get back to you with specific answers to that. And that for me to say a big thank you for an open and engaging conversation, Wouter. And looking forward to the next big announcement around your company, because I'm sure there's going to be many of those.
Thanks, Jos, for having me, and apologies for the technical difficulties during this time. But really appreciate you having me on and having the conversation with me today.
No worries.
Thanks for everyone who tuned in as well.
Pleasure to have you, and thank you indeed to the audience, and looking forward to a next session with everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.